Good morning, everyone. My name is Ron Otto. I'm the lead pastor here at Lincoln Christian Church. It's a joy to have you with us today. I know so many of you are here connected with families today. Well done. Good job. Julia Gazzardo, she was born and raised right here in Lincoln, Illinois. She was raised right here in our church, came up through our youth ministries, and then committed her life to go to Ozark Christian College. And while she's been there, God has just been growing her heart. And now all of a sudden she just feels this call to go to the Middle East. The Middle East, oh my goodness, I know your parents are nervous. I know they are. I know Grandpa and Gail and everybody is just so proud of you, Julia, but you know, that is quite a calling in someone's life. And so we do want you to be joining her in prayer for safety for the next 2 months and her family for safety. And I just know God's going to do amazing things through you. But she's got to go to college on one of our scholarships. This is one of the reasons why we raise kids here. Not trying to send our kids to the Middle East, but just at some point that they would go out and just choose to impact this world for Jesus is huge. It's just huge. And on behalf of all of us, we're very proud of you. So well done. Good job, right? All right, we're talking about footprints this month and the footprints that we leave behind. When Samantha, our firstborn, was very young, if you would have asked her, what do you want to be when you grow up? She would have said, I want to be a mommy. The most important person in her life was her mom, and just watching her mom, and she just knew she wanted to be a mommy. Now, I was very excited to hear that because a year before that, she wanted to grow up and be a fire truck. So we're definitely moving in the right direction here. Anyone that comes to my house, you'll miss it. It's something I've watched too many times. Bonnie is a real blessing to our family, and especially in the role of motherhood. All four of my kids would say that. And now as a grandmother, it's just amazing. I see her walking around the house, and behind her are 5 little grandchildren right in step with her. She looks like a mother duck with their ducklings just going all over the place. And they are following in her steps in so many ways. We're talking about the importance of footprints today, not just for moms, but for all of us. We're all leaving footprints behind. All of our footprints have a story. You have a footprint somewhere in your life that was left by somebody very important. Somewhere along the way, someone left a footprint in your life, a grandparent, a parent, a teacher, a coach, some mentor, a professor somewhere along the way. Where it was so important, it changed your whole direction of your life. Your whole destiny was changed because of a footprint that was left. This can be such a good thing. We got to take our footprints serious. What we're leaving behind is going to lead somebody somewhere. And so the question is today, what are your footprints leading people to? Today I want to visit some women who had unbelievable footprints of courage. You talk about footprints of courage. They followed Jesus when it was the most dangerous. They followed Jesus when it was the most emotionally overwhelming. They followed Jesus all the way to the cross. Jesus had 12 disciples, all male. It was a very chauvinistic world back then, so there were this. But Jesus also took the time to include women in his ministry. These women heard his teachings. These women saw his miracles. They were a part of that ministry all along. And what you need to know today is that Jesus, he's the first rabbi of his time to do such a thing. Rabbis back then didn't do stuff like that. And Jesus lifted and elevated the value of a woman by including them in his ministry. And when all the other disciples fled, when all the other disciples went into hiding, these women followed the steps of Jesus all the way to his death on a cross. Oh my goodness, if we're leading people and they're looking at our footprints, to be able to lead people to the cross and to the tomb, so valuable. If you believe in God, if you believe in an eternal life, if you believe there really is a heaven, then helping people find their way to those blessings is the most important thing. And sometimes we don't pay attention to how important our footprints are. There's lists given, by the way. I want to talk to the critic in the room for just a moment. If you have some doubt I'm glad you're here. We love people who come and investigate the story. We can handle hard questions. But the contradictions in the list, we hear that. All four of the Gospels, when they talk about the group that was at the cross, they all have a few different names. The lists don't exactly line up, which I'm telling you, that actually adds credibility to the story, because when you're in a court of law, if all the witnesses tell the exact same story, someone's going to say they've been coached. That's why they're all telling it. There's got to be a few differences. And oh my goodness, when Jesus went to the cross, the disciples were freaking out. No disciple stood up and said, hey, you know what we should do? We should probably take attendance right now. And, Mary here, Joanna here, No, nobody did that. So they're relying on their memory and what they remember. And then you only have one disciple who actually went to the cross. John. Who are the women that went to the cross? Here's the list that's given when they're all compiled. Mary Magdalene, of course, was one of the women at the cross. Salome, she's the wife of Zebedee, the mother of James and John, the sons of thunder. Those are disciples. Mary, the mother of James the younger and of Joseph. Joanna, who is the wife of Chuza. By the way, that's an official, court official. She would have had some means in her life. She would have had the ability to help pay for some of the ministry. Susanna, whom Jesus healed. And then most of the passages say there were many other daughters of Jerusalem. They're just unnamed, but we know there was a group of them. And then, of course, if you haven't heard this before, but it appears in almost all the movies, Mary, the mother of Jesus, was there watching her son pass. I know there's some moms in the room. You've had to stand at the grave of a child, and oh my gosh, it just breaks my heart. It's described as the most painful event anybody could go through. And yet Mary didn't stop believing. Mary didn't turn her back on the early church. She didn't shake her fist at God. She stayed right where God needed her most. These women are so close to the cross at this moment when very few people wanted to be close to the cross. They're so close that they can actually have a conversation with Jesus. Jesus looks down from the cross. He sees his mom, who she had to be just an emotional wreck. And he sees his one disciple, John. He's the only one who came. And Jesus assigns the care of his mother to his disciple, John. This is found in John 19. Jesus said to Mary, "Woman, behold your son now." And then Jesus said to John, "Behold your mother." And from that hour, the disciple took her into his own household. John became the caregiver to Mary. By the way, when you get into the book of Acts in the early church, Mary is still a part of that story too. The mother of Jesus. These people followed in the footsteps when they were the most dangerous and went right to the cross. And then what God's going to do is honor that decision by also letting some of those women be at the tomb when Jesus is resurrected. Now again, to the doubter for just a moment. The most phenomenal aspect of the witnesses to the resurrection of Jesus is the women. The women of Jesus' day were not valued. The women were looked down upon. They were not treated well. They were not defended. And no Jewish author back then would have used a woman as his proof of the resurrection. They just wouldn't have done that. A woman's word wasn't even acceptable in a court of law. You couldn't even use her word in a court of law. And so if you want to think that a bunch of Jewish men got together and made up this whole story, the last thing the Jewish men would have done is have a woman witness the resurrection. And yet that's exactly what happened. That's exactly the way all the disciples, all the gospel writers have to record it, because that's the true history. Who knew back then as they were writing that? They had to be wagging their head saying, nobody's going to buy this. But here we are 2,000 years later, and we can look at that and say, the evidence is overwhelming just in that part alone. This is a beautiful aspect of the story. This is who Jesus was at that time. When a prostitute crashes in on a dinner party at Simon's house, Jesus is kind and Jesus is patient with her. When Mary is under attack by her sister, Martha, for not helping in the kitchen, Jesus defends her. When an older woman puts 2 coins in the offering, all that she had, Jesus elevates her. When a woman breaks the law and reaches out and touches the cloak of Jesus, Jesus turns around and blesses her. If you want to know how Jesus sees women, this is the honor and the tribute and the respect that he gives a woman, and he will defend her. Of all the issues that surround women in ancient days, God would turn around and use a woman for the most amazing proof of all the Gospels. They saw Jesus resurrected, and they're the ones who run and tell the disciples of what happened. I'm going to say some things today. I've struggled with this all week long. I've rewritten it a dozen times. But I just feel led to say it, and I've decided I'm going to follow the Spirit at this point. Whether you're male or female in the room, parent or grandparent, the footprints that we're leaving behind are so vitally important to the spiritual well-being of children, to the spiritual well-being. Now, let me tell you something. Psychiatrists and psychologists all over the world have summed up that there's 4 aspects to a person. There's the physical, there's the mental, there is the emotional, and there is the spiritual. They're saying now there's a spiritual side to people. You got to find some way to feed that spiritualness. Now listen, granted, the secular psychiatrists are not telling you to take on religion. They're certainly not pointing you to Christianity. I understand it. But go out in nature. I hear this all the time from people. When I'm in nature, it just feeds me spiritually. I'm going to go up and love a rock and hug a tree, whatever it is. And because we've recognized that, anyone who's trying to break away from the grip of alcohol are told by Alcoholics Anonymous that the best success you'll have is tapping into a higher power. You got to discover a higher power. Now, they take it a little step further. They like Jesus as that higher power, but they leave it up to the individual. You need to feed something spiritual. Now, here's what I'm hearing in this world. Here's what I'm hearing from young parents. Well, I'm not going to force my child to go to church like my family did. And what that tells me is you really don't believe God is that real. You really don't believe heaven is a reward at the end of all of this, and you certainly don't believe in eternal life. There's nothing else in the well-being of your child that you check out on. Their physical being, you don't check out on that. Hey, yeah, you're hungry? I don't care what you find. Go find something to eat. Cookies all day long? Sure, go ahead. No, you don't do that. You're like, no. That's not good for you. You got to eat something healthy. We make sure that physically they're getting good nourishment at that time. When they have intellectually, we don't sit there intellectually and say, you know what, I'm not going to force you to go to school like my parents forced me. Now, you know what, sit down at the TV. Whatever you learn will be good enough. It'll get you through. No. That's not what we do. We sit there and we make sure that they go to school because their mind needs to grow, and we put them in an environment where that can grow. Emotionally, there's not a parent in a room who would tell their young child, you know what, I'm not going to hug you. I'm not going to kiss you. There won't be any I love yous in my life. Wherever you go and find that, I'll support you. But I'm not going to be the one to... No. For the parents and the grandparents in this room, there have been thousands of hugs and hundreds of thousands of kisses and a million I love yous. Why? Because that emotional aspect we make sure we take serious. We need to be involved in feeding that. But then it comes to the spiritual side and we just check out, thinking that it's not that important, and it's a huge mistake. Any child that you help getting on the right path to Jesus, let me tell you something, it pays huge dividends. To the children in the room, who are struggling with your faith, let me tell you something. All we want is to hold you forever. And so we give you the best means of getting there. In the darkness of this world, we give you a flashlight to help you navigate this. Oh, Mom and Dad, they're on their soapbox again. Are we? Oh, and one more thing. Watch what you say about the bride of Jesus Christ, too, because every woman in his life he defended pretty fiercely. And the church is called the bride of Christ. And you can reject her if you want. That's your call. But one day you'll have to give an account for every word you spoke against the bride of Jesus Christ. And he doesn't take that so kindly. Was that too much today? I admire a woman of strength. I admire a woman who lays down footprints to the cross and to the tomb and points people to Jesus Christ. It is such a woman of courage in the world we live in today. Moms in the room, be careful. Pick the right time. Pick the right time. Pick the right words. Be wise with those moments, but they'll come. And when God gives you an open door, have the strength to walk through it. You know, everything changed back in World War II. We started admiring women of strength. Rosie the Riveter appeared. She was a promotional poster, but she represented a lot back in World War II. All the men went off to war, and there was no one to work in the factories. And so all of a sudden, here was this big work change, this big shift happened at that time. The women, we need you to come to work in the factory. Man, they were building tanks and airplanes and ammunition. They were doing it all. And this poster appeared of Rosie the Riveter. She was a woman of great value, a woman of great strength. And let me tell you something. As much as the men did for our country in the battlefield, the women did equally by going to work and helping to keep this country going. And we recognize Rosie the Riveter. We can do it. The poster's a little different today. It's new. It says, we can do it, but first coffee. But anyway, once she's got her coffee, look out. The Amazon loves Rosie the Riveter. You can buy stamps and lunch boxes and coffee mugs and little rubber duckies and a bobblehead. And, hey, Bonnie, even a pickleball paddle. Look at that. We've learned over time to elevate the value of a woman. Isn't it amazing that 2,000 years ago, Jesus taught us to do the same? Yeah, I love a woman of strength, a woman who's not afraid to point her children to Jesus. And the only reason we do it is because we want to hold you forever. A woman who leads her children to Jesus will not only hold them forever, but one day she gets the applause of heaven. So moms in the room today, you're needed. Grandmothers in the room, you're not done. There's still an opportunity to point grandkids in the right direction. We're going to have a feature song right now. It's tender, it's beautiful, and I love the way it's done. But if there's someone here today, you're ready to make a big public commitment, I'm going to ask that you come down and join me. I'm going to be sitting right over here. Come down and join me, and we'll take care of that when the song's over.